But this is a place where you don't want to be because it's an easy way to have relationships, to have friendships without having to put forth much or any real effort into them, which actually explains why so many people are feeling empty, feeling like there's a hole where their relationships, where their friendships should be, because they're staying in that hidden little pocket where they're getting enough connection that it keeps them there. They're not getting connection that actually fills them up. Hey, it's Carly Burr, and welcome back to Taking Life Offline. Today, I am pulling back the curtain on aspect number 2 that goes into building your offline presence. I'm doing this 4-part series all about building your offline presence because building an offline presence has been the number one thing that has helped me be able to successfully stay offline for almost 9 years now. Building an offline presence has been my focus, it has been my mission, it has been my main goal over the last 9 years, and it's really been the thing that has helped me be able to build my life in a way where I don't need social media anymore. Social media isn't needed for me to fulfill my social needs. I've been able to take care of all of those offline, as well as any other need that social media might be filling for you. So in this 4-part series, I hope that it's helpful for you in giving you a greater perspective in what offline could look like for you, what you could build your life offline to look like as well. And it doesn't have to look exactly like mine, nor will it look exactly like mine, but I'm giving you sort of like an open-ended guideline that will kind of give you some steps that you can take to figure out exactly how living life offline can be most fulfilling for you. So if you're on a mission to embrace life offline, this is the series for you. And if you didn't catch last week's episode, I uncover aspect number 1 that goes into building an offline presence. So you want to be sure to go back and listen to that one first. So I will link the episode in the show notes to this episode. I also want to extend an invitation to you to join us inside my free community called Offline the Community. This community is the place to come and finally connect with people who share the common goal of embracing life offline. People who are going through the struggles, who are experiencing the wins in between, and who are coming together to support each other along this journey that can be full of ups and downs. So we'd love to have you inside the community so we can support you along your way wherever you are right now in your journey. Also, during this 4-part series, I'm in there at the beginning of the week sharing a specific action that you can do that applies from this episode of our Building Your Offline Presence series. So it's a great way to get involved with people who are also listening to the series on a different level inside the community. So I will leave the link for you to join us inside this community. Again, it's totally free. We'd love to be able to support you along your journey. You'll find that link in the description to this episode. Now let's get right into aspect number 2 of building your offline presence. Aspect number 2 that goes into building your offline presence is your presence with others. This is your family, your friends, your peers, and even strangers maybe. This is such an important aspect, and of course all of them are, but this one specifically because this is one of the main reasons I hear people who are wanting to go offline struggle to go because they're feeling like they're going to be disconnected. They're going to have that feeling of loneliness once they're not on social media anymore. So I'm excited to get into this subject today of building your presence with others. So hopefully you too can get to the point where you can build your presence in your real life in such a way that social media will no longer need to fulfill that need for you. We've become so accustomed to connecting online, to liking posts, to posting comments, and to interacting that way. It's almost become like the first touch point when you're building a relationship or a friendship with someone is the friend request online is like the extension of your hand being like, can we be friends? Instead of exchanging numbers, we exchange Instagram handles. And the problem with that is it allows that connection that you're making with that person to stay online. Okay, how many times have you followed someone online and then you start interacting with them there so you feel like you're starting to get to know them, but you don't actually take that connection off the phone? It kind of just stays that surface level connection through social media. Another part to this is that suddenly you're part of their world when you're their friend on social media, part of their world. You're able to get a feel for this person. You're able to have some preconceived notions based off of stalking their profile and seeing the type of pictures they post, seeing their family, trying to get like your own feeling and your own vibe about who this person might be. So if you don't have a social media presence, like me, then when you meet someone and they go, hey, what's your Instagram? Let's be friends. And I say, oh, I actually am not on there. You're gonna have to actually get my phone number to get to know me. And that's actually one of my favorite parts about being offline, is that right there. Is that it forces you to really form a connection with this person offline from the beginning. So they actually have to get to know you before they can have any other preconceived judgments about you aside from the first initial time you guys met. They can't go stalk your profile. They have to actually get to know you. So today we're going to be getting super detailed about how you can grow your offline presence. And these are the things we're going to be diving into. Number 1 being understanding your social needs individually. Number 2 being, if you were starting from scratch, how would you go about building your circle, whether it's a small circle or a big circle? Number 3 is, how do you nurture the relationships that you already have and start showing up and changing your presence within those relationships that already are existent in your life? And then 4, we're going to be setting up expectations for yourself and making a plan going forward with how you can start implementing and growing your offline presence. Now let's dive into the details, starting with number 1, determining what your personal social needs are. I feel like social media has made it really easy to kind of blur what your social needs are, because you see so much of what other people seem to be doing. So if someone out there, it looks like they have a ton of friends and they're always out posting with their group of friends, doing all these fun and amazing things, you might feel like you are a lonely person. Like you are someone who doesn't have any friends or who doesn't have any fun. And that is not entirely true. You have to take a step back and figure out what your personal social needs are. For someone out there, having a large group of friends might be what they need to have a fulfilled social life. For you, you might only need one person or 2 people to fulfill that social need. And I feel like another problem that social media has created is that we have a couple hundred or even 1,000 friends online. So when you leave, you might feel like, oh my goodness, I only actually have 0 real life friends. That could really be a reality for a lot of people who end up leaving social media, is that you haven't formed any sort of real friendships or connections in your life in a really long time, and it's not entirely your fault. This is something that a lot of people get stuck in, and it's a lot to do with the loneliness, I believe, that our society faces today. Because when you log on to your social media, you suddenly see all these people as if you guys are friends. You see what they're up to, you can interact somewhat with these people's posts, and you can stay hidden in the process. You can feel like you know other people's lives without them having to know too much about you, which for some people that might feel really safe, is to not have to expose yourself in a way that might feel vulnerable, allow people to come into your life and really get to know you. And so I think a lot of people end up getting stuck here where they don't really have any friends, but they have friends online who they keep up with, but they don't actually know anything about them. So being really honest about what you need socially in your life, what will be fulfilling for you. And if you have absolutely no clue because it's been such a long time or it's never been a thing you've thought about before, something that you can do is think about when you were younger. What did your social groups or situation look like if it wasn't even a group? Where did you fit in socially? So for me, I was always a person who had like 1 or 2 really close friends. I never had a group of girlfriends that were like 6 or 7 or 8 people. I had 1 or 2 really close friends, and then I would kind of be an individual hopping around in different social circles. I had friends in each one, but I didn't belong in any particular place. And I liked it that way, and that's still how I am to this day. I don't put myself in any group. I kind of stay as an individual and have a really close friend, and then I can kind of reach out to a greater social group if I'm feeling like I need that. But at my core, I'm really an independent person. And I think another aspect for me that goes into this is the fact that my husband is my best friend. So I live with my best friend. I get to talk to my best friend every night, and we get to talk about any and all of the things. So that very much fulfills a lot of social needs for me. And I understand that is not the case in everybody's situation if you are married. So I think if I didn't have my husband as my best friend, I would probably rely a lot more on my friends, maybe even expand my social circle to get that social need elsewhere. I'm not the type of person who needs to talk to my friends every day. I don't have to be communicating with them at all times to feel like we are good friends. That's not how I've ever operated and probably never will operate. It's kind of too much for me to have to always be communicating and always be like remembering a conversation. It's a little bit too much. So my point in sharing this is get to know your individual social needs, because it can be really tempting to feel like you need to have a larger circle. When you see someone else and they seem like they're happy and fulfilled in their circle, it can feel tempting, like maybe I should try that out, and maybe you should. But get to know yours at your core. And if you look at yours at your core and you go, I've never actually been socially fulfilled. If I think back to when I was in high school or when I was even in elementary, I don't actually like the feelings that come up when I think about my social life back then. Don't let that trap you. Don't let that be like, okay, well then I'm just never going to have good connections. I'm never going to have good friends. You can 100% reinvent your social situation at any point in your life. You can do that. So if you feel stuck, if you feel yuck about your past social situations, just go into this as this is a clean slate. This is an experimentation time for me to figure out how I'm going to be fulfilled socially. And that's an exciting place to start, is from ground zero, being able to really figure out what's going to be fulfilling for you. So start with anything and everything. And we're going to get into that with the next step. But the point here being, really try to understand what is fulfilling for you, and don't try to make it look like anyone else's. Just try to figure out what your social needs are personally. Now let's get into step number 2 that goes into building an offline presence with others. And this step, we're going to be talking about how to build a presence if you're starting from scratch. If you have 0 friends offline, you're just starting over, how do you go about forming your circle? Whether that's 1 person, whether that's 5 people, whether that's 10 people, whether that's a larger group, how can you fill your circle? I kind of want to talk about this as if you were growing an online presence starting from scratch. What would you do? If you were trying to have a following online, you would be showing up probably every day. You would be interacting with other people's posts. You would be following a bunch of people. You'd be doing all sorts of things like this. You'd probably be posting a bit about yourself so people could feel like they could get to know a little bit about you. And this is where a lot of people fall into this trap, okay? Building an online presence, even if you aren't someone who's trying to build a brand or anything, but you have somewhat of a presence online, meaning you have friends online. You can get stuck there because it's a safe place to stay hidden. I kind of touched on this earlier, but this is a place where you don't want to be because it's an easy way to have relationships, to have friendships without having to put forth much or any real effort into them, which actually explains why so many people are feeling empty and feeling like there's a hole where their relationships and where their friendships should be, because they're staying in that hidden little pocket where they're getting enough connection that it keeps them there. They're not getting connection that actually fills them up. Now let's apply this sort of model of building an online presence to building an offline presence, specifically with the non-existent circle. So I'd suggest starting out with paying attention to the places that you frequent. What situations do you find yourself in where you typically don't choose to speak up, but you easily could? For example, I have 2 little kids, which means I'm always doing the mom things. I'm always at the museums. I'm always at the parks when the weather is good enough for that. I'm always doing the kid things. And when you're a mom, it just makes it so easy to make friends and to form connections, because when you go to these kid places, there's also a bunch of other moms. So you can choose to speak up in these situations and spark a conversation. You never know who might end up being your friend and who you can exchange numbers with and take this conversation elsewhere in another play date or in another meetup after this initial one. And not every single person you're going to meet, you're going to want to exchange numbers with. I feel like you will definitely know if you meet someone, if there's some sort of like vibe between the 2 of you, you will know, and you will be like, hey, let's exchange numbers and let's get together again. And then you can start building a relationship from there. And if it sticks, and if you end up really liking this person, that's amazing. If you reach out, they never respond, that's totally fine too. You can't expect every single person that you reach out to talk to become your friend, and that's okay, because honestly, what's the worst that could happen if you choose to speak up? The person doesn't want to be your friend, they don't really want to talk to you, brush that off. The person's annoying and obnoxious and you're like, I wish I never said anything in the first place. That's okay too. You can like make up an excuse for needing to go the opposite way. There's a solution for everything. But in all seriousness, if you're building a circle from scratch and you're trying to connect with people who are like you, but they also don't want to speak up because it's uncomfortable for them and it's not really their personality, how are you ever going to make new connections? If neither of you are going to speak up, you won't. It's going to require you to get out of your comfort zone and really push yourself here. Another thing that I think was really a great suggestion inside my free community offline, there was a wonderful suggestion that someone had made. This friend had said, okay, I don't have a large social circle, and I'm wanting to kind of put myself out there, get a little uncomfortable, and figure out how to make more friends. So she decided to join a couple meetup groups through that app Meetup. If you've ever heard of it, it's a great app that has, you can search your interests and find local groups near you. They're doing that thing that you're interested in. So that's a great place to start as well. Looking up groups that do things that you're interested in close to you. That's how you can go start making some connections, and at least you guys had the fact in common that you're at that event that is for that specific purpose. So if I were starting from scratch, I would do something very similar to that, or I would be going to events, or I would be talking to people at the grocery store, or I would be just kind of putting myself out there in a way, being like, hey, I'm here to make new friends, like who's also in the same situation, because I think a lot of the times people out there are also wanting to make friends. So don't overthink it too much in your head, or you'll talk yourself out of doing the thing. Go in with an open mind and with the thought that maybe other people out here are also looking for friends too, because chances are that they are. I know it can be so scary at first, but I promise you it gets easier the more that you do it. And if you're wondering, okay, I'm wanting to do this, but I don't really know exactly how to start a conversation out of nowhere, out of thin air. A couple of things that I always start with are looking for something you can compliment them with. Looking for something that's around you in the setting that you're in to like make a comment on, or asking them a question. That's another great way to start a conversation, is by asking a question. Try not to overthink this too much and just really focus on being yourself, because if you can be yourself, you will end up attracting the right people to you. Now here you are. You started the conversation and it's going to go one of two ways. One, it's going to go nowhere and it's going to end very quickly. Or two, maybe it's going to start going somewhere. Maybe you'll feel like there's a connection between you and this person potentially, and you want to get to know them on a friendship level. If that's the case and you feel like maybe you guys could be friends, you have to be bold, you have to be brave here. This is when you have to extend the ask. You have to say, hey, and be totally honest. Say, hey, I'm making new friends. I'm in the process of like rebuilding a circle of people. I feel like you and I maybe could be friends. Would you like to exchange numbers? We could maybe get together sometime. Just be super upfront with them, and it's going to feel maybe a little bit weird if this is your first time ever doing this, but flip the situation. If you were sitting there and someone sparked a conversation with you, and they seemed like a normal, fun, cool person, and you felt a bit of a connection with them, and they asked you for your phone number, you wouldn't be like, whoa. No. Unless you don't feel that connection, unless you feel like there's something a little bit off, then don't do that. But if you feel like there could be a connection, you wouldn't think that it was weird. So don't overthink this step. And a good example that I have of this is about almost 4 years ago, actually. I met this girl. I was working a receptionist job, and she came into the place I was working, and I helped her a couple of times. She came in for like a couple of days. And then towards the end of her being able to leave this place where I was working, she came up to the desk and she was like, hey, I moved here from California, which I already knew because we had talked about that previously in another conversation. She's like, and I'm trying to make new friends. We don't know anyone here, and I feel like we could be friends. Can I have your phone number? And I was like, yes, absolutely, because I felt the same way about her. I was like, I like her. I feel like we could be friends. I didn't think about asking her for her number, but she thought about that for me, and I'm glad that she did, because we are still friends to this day. And she did something that's super important after she asked me for my number. She followed up with me later that day. It doesn't have to be in that same day. You don't have to be that aggressive. But following up with that person is important if you ever want to be able to maybe sprout a blossoming friendship. You have to follow up, or nothing's going to happen. Now I'm going to squash a thought that I know you're having right now in this moment. I know you're thinking, what if I reach out to this person who I just got their phone number and they don't respond? What if they thought I was weird? What if they don't actually want to get together? What if? Again, the overthinking is coming into play because we're human. But I want you to know that some people might not ever respond, and you might not ever bud a friendship from that one initial meet, and that is okay. Sometimes you might, but eventually you will find your people. And I want you to know that the more you put yourself out there, the more that you're trying to build a community, the more that you're actively getting out there, talking to people, exchanging numbers, the quicker you're going to find your people. Let's transition into the third piece to growing your presence with others that we're going to talk about today. And this piece is nurturing the relationships that you already have. So we're going to be taking the relationships that either you already have online or that you already have offline, and we're going to be visiting those, showing up in those relationships differently now. Let's start with the people who you're connected with online, who you are actually friends with in real life. Say you're used to seeing their updates online, so you don't ask them too much about them offline when you guys are together or when you're texting or calling each other elsewhere. These people that you're seeing updates from online are people who would love to hear more about these updates offline, people you'd actually like to be getting together with in real life. Then start making it happen. Start reaching out to these people online and forming these connections and these get-togethers off of your social media. That way you can start building that presence with these people offline. And in my opinion, it makes the relationship that much stronger and that much more meaningful, which matters a lot to me in relationships, to take them offline and have them a lot more than surface level. Now let's talk about your friends who you already get together with a lot offline, but maybe you'd like to see more. Reach out to them as well, and even be honest and open, which is huge, you guys, in any communication, being open and honest about where you are. Let them know that you're leaving social media or you left social media, so you're not going to see any updates that they're posting online, but you'd love to stay in touch. It's as simple as letting them know that this is what you're doing. And there's a couple of objections that you might be thinking, because I just talked to someone about this a few weeks ago, who she had expressed the concern of being a burden on people and asking them to text her the updates from their life when they happened, since she's not going to see it online. And my objection to that fear is that it's not an inconvenience if these people are your friends. If these people care about you and you are valuable in their life, sending a text is not going to be inconvenient. Keeping them in the loop isn't going to be inconvenient, and probably should be already a part of your relationship if it is something that exists offline. So let's go back to, if you're friends online and you're wanting to be friends offline, you've got to reach out to the people that you want to start cultivating an actual connection with offline, and let them know that you're not going to be there. So whether that's through a DM or that's through texting if you already have their number, but really letting them know. And with this story that I just shared a little bit of, I met this girl who had left social media last year. And one thing that she had told me that was really hard for her was that she had, when she had gone offline, there was a girl that she ran into at the grocery store, and she had been pregnant and had a baby, and she had no clue because she wasn't online. All that happened in the time that she had been offline. So she was like, I was so sad that I didn't get to go to her shower, and I told her I'd have loved to come to your shower, and I had no clue you were pregnant and all these things. So that made her sad in that moment that she wasn't able to be part of that big life event for her friend. But here's where I encourage you to really get honest with yourself, and it might hurt a little bit. If you were not invited to this shower, you probably aren't as good of friends with this person as you perceive yourself to be. If they didn't invite you or have your phone number even, a way to contact you off of social media, then you probably weren't someone who was on their list of people wanting to come to their baby shower. You probably aren't as great as friends as you think you are, which is another trick that social media has played in our heads, making us think we are friends with all these people, like we know these people, like they actually care about us too, when in reality, a lot of times they don't. So doing this, cultivating connections offline and being present in them, will help you keep your circle tight, keep it deep, and keep it really fulfilling. Another important part of nurturing who you already have, which I briefly touched on, is being communicative. Letting them know that you're trying to show up more offline, that you're trying to work on your offline presence and nurturing the relationships that matter to you in your life. And a way that you can show people that you're working on this is by, first of all, telling them. Second of all, asking them, how can I show up for you? What do you need from me right now at this season of life? I know that you're going through this. How can I best support you through this difficult time? These are things I often ask my friends so that I know exactly how I can show up and exactly how I can be that good friend to them during this time of their life. It's that simple of being communicative. And I know I say simple. It doesn't mean easy for a lot of people. I know communication is a struggle for a lot of people out there. But if you can really get better at communication, your relationships will start to soar, and you will start to have them on levels that you haven't before if you work on this connection piece. And maybe you want the type of relationships where someone will just pick up the phone and call you or FaceTime you out of nowhere or show up at your door out of nowhere. I'm a firm believer that if you want those things, you've got to do those things first. You've got to be the exemplar of what you're wanting in return. And you're not always going to find that the things that you do, people are going to reciprocate, even if they really do care about you, because you have to keep in mind that what your personal social needs are might not be what their personal social needs are. How you need someone to show up for you might not be how they need someone to show up for them. So it can get kind of tricky here if you don't have a friend that is like exactly like you, which I feel like is kind of rare, in the needs that each of you are needing. But I still think that it's important to show up the way that you would want someone to show up for you and communicate that as well. Communicate. I'm going to say that 1,000 times during this part is communicate, because it has been everything for me, and I know that it can be a game changer for you, but nothing will change unless you do. So start changing things up and start seeing differences in your relationships. This can also be a super fun step because it can allow you to experiment a little bit, to figure out what you want and what you need and how you like to show up for other people if you're not used to doing this. So have fun with it and make it more of an experiment that you're trying to figure out rather than like a dooming task that lies ahead. Just change the way that your mind is thinking about growing this presence with other people who are already part of your life. One thing that I'm currently working on in my relationships is following up on previous conversations that we had. So if we were together last week or the week before and my friend said something that should be something that I could follow up on, I'm really trying to remember what she said so that I can ask her about it next time we're together. And this is often hard right now, and I'm not trying to make excuses for myself. But when we're with the kids and it's loud and someone's crying one second and screaming the other, and then like the conversation gets broken up and it's just not that great, I still am trying to make an effort to really prioritize remembering the things that are important to them so that I can show them that I care. And another thing that I'm going to prioritize this year is getting together without the kids, because we're always with the kids. And so I'm really trying to carve out some time in my evenings or on my weekends where I can get together with my friends just one-on-one so that we can have those conversations that don't get interrupted and we can take relationships to a different level. So that's another priority I have this year. And another one that I wanted to share is nurturing my relationship with my sisters, because honestly, I'm closer to my friends than I'm close to my sisters. And part of that is because either location or because of the seasons of life that we're in. I've been at home for almost 3 years now. One of my sisters lives in a different state. One of my sisters was working full time, and so just on totally different seasons of life. That doesn't mean that I can't put in more effort towards nurturing those relationships. And one of my sisters actually now is home with her baby, so we do have more time that we could get together. I just need to put that as more of a priority, and I do have that on my list this year as something that I really want to do, is cultivate better and closer relationships with my sisters as I do my friends. So all this in a nutshell is to say, show up for the relationships that you want to nourish in your life. Be active in these people's lives and exemplify the way that you would hope people would show up for you. Lastly, I want you to set up some expectations for yourself moving forward. What are you going to do after today to start growing your offline presence? I wanted to go over a quick recap of everything that we talked about in this episode. 1, we went over understanding your personal social needs that are individual to you. Number 2, we went over if you were starting from scratch, starting to build a circle, whether that's small or large, what to do in that situation. And number 3, how to nourish the relationships that you already have, whether it means taking them offline or really working on the ones that you have in your real life. So I challenge you to leave today with plans to get to know yourself, get to know what you need to fill your social needs individually. Then I challenge you to start building your circle from scratch if that's where you're at, or to start nourishing and showing up for the people that you care about in your life offline. It really is that simple. But guess what? Once you start showing up offline, you might lose a few or a lot of friends. You might express a level of care for someone and wanting to be friends with them that they don't reciprocate, and that's okay. You don't have to hold on to everyone. It's okay to have a close, small circle. Or a big one. It's totally up to you and what you personally need, or the amount of effort and energy that you're willing to put out there in order to foster and maintain these types of relationships. It all depends on you. But one thing remains the same. You must be present offline in the relationship in order to reach new heights and reach new levels of connection. More fulfilling, more enjoyable, more lasting, more genuine connection. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you are feeling ready to get out there and start growing your offline presence. And I hope that you're not feeling too overwhelmed. I want you to remember that this is a marathon. This is not a sprint. This is a lifetime of dedication. This is something that I am still actively working on and will continue to actively work on in my life, is continuing to build my offline presence. So if you don't get it right the first time or in the first 5 minutes, don't give up. Keep at it and make it a constant practice that you work on continually in your life. that will give back to you along the way if you just stay consistent. And I'd love to be able to support you along your journey. So if you haven't already, be sure to join us inside our free community called Offline, where we can be there for you each step of the way, through the ups and through the downs and everything in between in your pursuit towards living your life offline. Again, you'll find that link in the description to the show notes of this episode. And I will be back next Monday to uncover the third aspect that goes into building an offline presence. And this one's actually one that I struggle with the very most, so I'm excited to dive into that with all of you. And I hope you take action on anything that's spoken to you up to this point. I hope to be able to connect with you inside our free community. And until then, I will catch you next week.